They said it couldn't happen. Not this fast. Not in our lifetime. Financial forecasters with decades of experience, people who've watched markets through every crisis since the 1980s, they all agreed on one thing. Gold might eventually reach $5,000 an ounce, maybe by the end of the decade, if multiple catastrophes aligned perfectly. But 3 weeks into 2026, impossible. They were wrong. And the reason they were wrong tells you everything you need to know about what's happening to American power right now. Because gold didn't just reach $5,000. It shattered through that barrier like it wasn't even there, and it's still climbing. Silver, the poor cousin of precious metals, has done something even more shocking. It's quadrupled in value over 12 months, 4 times what it was worth a year ago. These are assets that people buy specifically because they're supposed to be boring, because they don't move much, because they represent stability in an unstable world. And they're behaving like penny stocks in a speculative frenzy. Something is profoundly wrong, and that something has a name and an address. Donald Trump, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Now, I can already hear what some of you are thinking. Oh, great, another Trump hit piece, another person blaming everything on the president, another exaggerated claim about impending doom. But this isn't political opinion. This isn't partisan analysis. This is what markets are telling us when you learn to read the language they speak. And markets, whatever else you can say about them, don't have political opinions. They don't care about red or blue, left or right, conservative or liberal. They care about one thing: risk. And right now, markets are screaming that the United States of America under Donald Trump represents unacceptable risk. Let me take you inside the room where this crisis became undeniable. Last week, Davos, Switzerland. If you've never been, if you've never seen what this annual gathering actually looks like, let me paint you a picture. It's not just a conference. It's where power congregates. The actual people who run the world, not the conspiracy theory version, but the real version. Presidents and prime ministers making decisions that affect billions of lives. CEOs controlling companies with budgets larger than most countries. Central bankers who literally create money. Investors who move more capital in a single phone call than most people will see in 100 lifetimes. They all converge on this small alpine town every January. And this year, Donald Trump addressed them. The anticipation beforehand was palpable. Would he be presidential? Would he stay on message? Would his handlers manage to keep him focused? The answer came quickly: no. The speech started rambling almost from the first sentence. Trump jumping between topics without transitions, without coherent structure, just following whatever thought popped into his head at that moment. People in the audience, sophisticated people who understand global politics, they're exchanging those looks, the uncomfortable glances, the subtle head shakes. This is embarrassing, they're thinking. This makes America look weak. But then Trump says something that transforms embarrassment into genuine alarm. He begins talking about military force, about taking territories, about Greenland specifically, and Denmark's refusal to even discuss selling it. And he doesn't frame it as hypothetical. He doesn't couch it in diplomatic language. He suggests, in front of the assembled leadership of the free world, that the United States might use military force to seize territory from Denmark, a NATO member, an ally since the founding of the alliance 75 years ago, a country that has fought alongside American soldiers in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in every conflict where America called for support. The reaction in that room isn't something you can fully capture in news clips or written descriptions. You had to be there or watching the faces of people who were there. Government officials went rigid, like someone had electrified their chairs. CEOs stopped their subtle phone checking and looked up, fully focused, trying to process what they just heard. Central bankers, people trained to never show emotion, to keep their faces neutral under any circumstance. Their eyes widened, because everyone in that room immediately grasped what Trump had just done, even if he didn't grasp it himself. He took a sledgehammer to the single most important asset America possesses. Not military superiority, though that matters. Not economic size, though that matters too. Credibility, trust. The belief, shared globally for 80 years, that America can be relied upon, that it honors commitments, that it respects allies, that it follows certain basic rules even when those rules are inconvenient. Trump destroyed that belief in a 5-minute digression about Greenland, and you cannot put that back once it's broken. His team spent the next day in damage control mode, walking back the statements, claiming misinterpretation, insisting he didn't really mean military force, but the damage was irreversible. Because here's what people don't understand about trust in the international system. It's not like trust between individuals where you can apologize and rebuild. When a president of the United States says something, even if he retracts it later, the world has to assume he might mean it. They have to plan for that possibility. And once you've planted the idea that America might use military force against its own allies, you can't unplant it. It's out there, growing, metastasizing. And within 72 hours, the markets delivered their verdict. Gold exploded upward. Not a steady climb, not a gradual increase. An explosion. $5,000 per ounce. A level that was supposed to be impossible this year. Silver surged in tandem, continuing its incredible run. But more tellingly, more frightening if you understand what it signifies, the US dollar dropped. Hard. More than 2% in just days. The Australian dollar jumped, the euro strengthened, the Canadian dollar rose. This isn't normal market movement. This is capital flight. This is money running away from America as fast as electronic transfers allow. Now let me be very clear about what this means, because I don't think the mainstream coverage is adequately explaining the stakes here. When gold rises, it's usually interpreted as inflation hedge or safe haven buying. When the dollar falls, it's explained as normal currency fluctuation. But when both happen simultaneously, when gold surges while the dollar collapses, when other currencies strengthen as the dollar weakens, that's not a market fluctuation. That's a vote of no confidence. That's the world collectively deciding that American assets are too risky to hold, that dollars are too dangerous to own, that something else, anything else, is safer than trusting America. Ipek Oskardeskaya at Swissquote, an analyst who's been studying these patterns for decades, said something this week that should be carved into stone somewhere. The global order is shifting, and trust is gone. 3 words in that sentence matter more than anything else. Trust is gone. Not eroding, not damaged, not in need of repair, gone. The foundation of American power, the thing that makes the dollar work, the thing that allows the US to borrow trillions at reasonable rates, the thing that gives American sanctions their teeth, all of it rests on trust. And according to people who watch these markets professionally, that trust has evaporated. But Davos wasn't the beginning of this story. It was just the moment when something that had been building for months finally exploded into a crisis too obvious to ignore. To understand what's really happening, we need to go back further. We need to trace how we got here. Because Trump didn't destroy American credibility in one speech. He's been systematically, almost methodically, demolishing it piece by piece for over a year. And each piece he removes, each norm he breaks, each institution he attacks, sends another signal to global investors. Get out. Find safety elsewhere. America isn't safe anymore. April 2nd, 2025. A date that will probably be remembered by economic historians as the day everything started unraveling. Trump called it Liberation Day. The day he was going to liberate America from unfair trade deals and foreign exploitation. He announced sweeping tariffs, not targeted measures designed to address specific problems. Massive, comprehensive tariffs on allies and adversaries alike. Canada, Mexico, the European Union, China, everyone hit simultaneously. The stated goal was to bring manufacturing back to America, to make other countries pay their fair share, to demonstrate American strength. The actual effect was to panic markets and start capital flowing towards safer assets. Gold ticked up that day. Just a small move, $20 or $30 maybe. Nothing that would make headlines. But the direction was established. The pattern was set. Trump does something destabilizing, something that makes America look unpredictable or aggressive or unreliable, and money moves to gold. It's that simple. It's that direct. And once that pattern established itself, Once investors started associating Trump actions with gold buying, it became self-reinforcing. Throughout the spring and summer of 2025, Trump kept escalating. He started floating the idea of annexing Canada. At first, people thought it was a joke. Trump being Trump, saying outrageous things for attention. But he kept returning to it, posting maps on social media showing Canada colored as part of the United States, labeled as the 51st state, referring to Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney as Governor Carney, not once as a slip of the tongue, repeatedly, deliberately, treating a sovereign nation, America's closest ally, as though it were already a subordinate province. Every time he did this, every time he threatened or mocked or diminished Canada, gold moved higher, still gradually, still in increments that didn't cause alarm by themselves, but consistently, steadily. The trajectory was clear to anyone watching carefully, and the sophisticated investors, the ones managing billions, they were watching very carefully indeed. They understood what this meant. If Trump treats Canada this way, if he shows this level of disrespect to America's most reliable partner, what does that say about American foreign policy? What does it say about American reliability? What does it mean for anyone who's trusting American promises? Then Trump turned his attention to the Federal Reserve. And this is where things got genuinely dangerous, where the implications became truly alarming for anyone who understands how the global financial system actually works. The Federal Reserve isn't just another government agency. It's the institution that manages the world's reserve currency. It sets interest rates that affect every economy on Earth. It makes decisions about money supply that ripple through global markets. And its credibility, its ability to function, its power to influence economic outcomes, all of that rests on one absolutely critical principle: independence. The Fed must be independent from political pressure. This isn't a nice-to-have feature. It's not a preference or a tradition. It's the foundation of everything. Without independence, without the ability to make decisions based on economic data rather than political considerations, a central bank loses all credibility. The currency it manages loses credibility. And when the world's reserve currency loses credibility, the entire global financial system becomes unstable. Every economist knows this. Every central banker knows this. Every sophisticated investor knows this. Trump either doesn't know or doesn't care. He began attacking Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chair, in public, on social media, in interviews, at rallies, demanding interest rate cuts, insisting the Fed lower rates to juice the economy for political reasons, regardless of what economic data suggests is appropriate, calling Powell names, questioning his intelligence, treating the Fed chair like a subordinate who should obey orders, rather than an independent official making decisions based on economic analysis. Every central banker around the world watched this happening. They watched an American president openly trying to bully the Fed into making political decisions. And they all drew the same conclusion. If Trump doesn't respect Fed independence, if he's willing to attack it publicly and pressure it overtly, then the Fed is compromised. And if the Fed is compromised, the dollar is unreliable. And if the dollar is unreliable, we need alternatives. Gold purchases increased. Not dramatically, not in ways that made headlines, but steadily. Central banks around the world quietly diversifying their reserves. Less exposure to dollars, more exposure to gold. The foundation cracking further. Then came October and the Maduro operation, the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro. Now, whether you think Maduro is a dictator who deserves to face justice, whether you believe he's destroyed Venezuela and oppressed his people, that's a separate question from how his capture happened and what it signaled to the world. The way it was executed, the apparent disregard for Venezuelan sovereignty, the lack of consultation with international bodies, all of it sent a message. The United States under Trump operates outside established norms. International law is optional, sovereignty is conditional. Rules apply to everyone except America. Every government on Earth watched this and recalculated their relationship with Washington. If the US can do this to Venezuela, a country they've had problems with for years, what might they do to others? What rules actually constrain American action? What promises can actually be relied upon? The answers to those questions were increasingly unclear, And uncertainty is poison in international relations. It's worse than hostility. At least with hostility, you know where you stand. With uncertainty, you can't plan. You can't make long-term decisions. You can't trust commitments. And when you can't trust commitments, you protect yourself. You diversify. You buy gold. Markets responded. Another surge. Gold climbing higher, the pattern strengthening. Trump action, gold reaction. Trump threat, gold jump, over and over. By December, the price had climbed from around $3,500 per ounce, where it started the year, to over $4,500, a 40% increase in 8 months. Unprecedented for gold. Alarming for anyone who understood what it represented. But still, most mainstream coverage treated it as a financial story. Gold prices rising, investors seeking safety. No real connection made to the systematic destruction of American credibility that was driving it. And then Davos happened. The speech, the threats, the rambling incoherence that made America look weak and unstable simultaneously, the suggestion of military force against NATO allies, and the dam broke. The 2% dollar drop in 72 hours, the gold surge past 5,000, the flight to other currencies, the elevated interest rates on US money markets as money flooded out. All of it happening at once, all of it connected, all of it driven by one man's systematic destruction of the trust that underpins American power. But to truly understand what we're witnessing, to grasp the full significance of these market movements, we need to understand where this story really begins. And that beginning is almost a decade ago, 2017, when China began selling US Treasury bonds. This is crucial context that almost no one is explaining properly. For decades, going back to the 1980s and really accelerating in the 1990s and 2000s, China ran massive trade surpluses with the world, particularly with the United States. Americans bought Chinese goods by the trillions. All those dollars flowed to China, and China needed somewhere to invest those dollars. The obvious choice, the safe choice, the choice everyone made, was US Treasury bonds. Government debt backed by the full faith and credit of the United States, considered literally the safest investment on earth, safer than anything else, and China bought trillions worth, became the largest foreign holder of US government debt. In effect, China became America's banker, lending money to the US government by buying its bonds, allowing America to run budget deficits far larger than would otherwise be possible, enabling the United States to spend more than it collected in taxes year after year after year. This was a symbiotic relationship. China needed somewhere safe to park its dollars. America needed someone to buy its debt so it could keep deficit spending. Both sides benefited. The system worked. But by 2017, as tensions between Washington and Beijing started escalating, as the relationship began souring, Chinese leadership made a calculation. This arrangement creates vulnerability. Being so heavily invested in US debt gives America leverage over China, financial leverage that could be weaponized. And American policy was becoming increasingly hostile, increasingly unpredictable. Maybe relying so heavily on US assets wasn't wise long term. So they began diversifying. Slowly at first, selling Treasury bonds, not dumping them, which would crater the market and hurt China's remaining holdings, but steadily reducing exposure. And what did they buy instead? Gold, physical gold. Thousands of tons of gold flowing into Chinese central bank vaults. Gold that couldn't be frozen by American sanctions, couldn't be devalued by American monetary policy, couldn't be weaponized against them. Gold they controlled completely. Russia saw what China was doing and understood immediately. Russia had even more reason to worry about dollar exposure. American sanctions were already hitting Russian entities. The US was demonstrating increasingly that it would weaponize the dollar-based financial system against adversaries. If you're Russia, if you're watching the US, use financial tools as weapons. Holding dollars becomes risky. So they followed China's lead. Massive gold purchases, building reserves that provided protection from American financial pressure. Then India joined the pattern. Then other central banks started paying attention. If the world's largest economies are reducing dollar exposure and buying gold, they must see risks the rest of us should consider. And gradually, without fanfare, without headlines, central banks globally began diversifying. Less concentrated in dollars, more diversified across assets, with gold playing an increasingly important role. The shift was happening. The foundation of dollar dominance was developing cracks. But it was manageable, gradual. The system was adjusting but not breaking. Until Trump won in November 2024, and everything that had been happening slowly went into hyperdrive. Because Trump isn't just continuing trends that were already causing concern. He's validating every fear, confirming every worry, proving that yes, America is exactly as unpredictable and unreliable as the pessimists feared. His trade war isn't just about tariffs. It's about treating allies like enemies, making planning impossible, demonstrating that American commitments can be revoked without warning. His attacks on Powell aren't just about interest rates. They're about showing that institutional independence doesn't matter if it conflicts with what Trump wants. The Maduro capture wasn't just about Venezuela. It was about proving that international norms are optional for America. The Davos speech wasn't just embarrassing. It was Trump revealing that he's willing to threaten military force against the closest American allies if they don't submit to his demands. Each action accelerates the capital flight. Each statement increases gold purchases. Each broken norm validates the decision to diversify away from dollar dependence. The pattern Trump established has become a feedback loop. His behavior drives capital flight. Capital flight weakens the dollar. Dollar weakness validates concerns about American stability. More capital flees. The cycle reinforces itself. Christopher Lowney at RBC Capital Markets published analysis this week that laid out the situation clearly. Uncertainty and macro factors, especially dollar weakness, have driven gold's rise, he wrote. Between trade instability, political chaos, geopolitical uncertainty, and concerns about Fed independence, the drivers supporting gold remain strong. Based on our conversations with investors and central banks in January, we see no sign that demand will decrease. We expect continued strong buying from both institutional and central bank sources. The factors driving gold purchases aren't going away while Trump remains in office. Let me translate what he's really saying. The smart money has concluded that America under Trump is too risky for the level of exposure they previously maintained. This isn't temporary market volatility. This is structural reallocation, permanent changes to how global wealth gets invested. The flight from dollars and American assets into gold and alternatives isn't going to reverse as long as Trump continues behaving the way he's behaving, and nothing suggests he's going to change. If anything, he's accelerating. The search for safety has fundamentally shifted toward hard assets, physical things with intrinsic value, gold obviously, silver, copper, lithium, rare earth elements, commodities needed for technology and industry. Assets that have value beyond what people agree they're worth, that can't be devalued by erratic leadership or institutional attacks. Paper promises from governments, especially from the United States government, no longer automatically command confidence the way they once did. People are asking questions that would have seemed insane 10 years ago. Will America actually honor its debts? Not will America technically default, but will the dollars they repay with be worth what the dollars they borrowed were worth? Can we trust American institutions to function properly when the president openly attacks them? Can we trust American leadership to be rational and predictable? Can we count on American commitments when Trump demonstrates daily that he has no respect for norms or agreements? The fact that these questions are even being asked represents a seismic shift in global confidence. Consider the scale of what we're discussing. The United States government owes $38 trillion. That's not national wealth. That's just government debt. 38 trillion. That number is so large, it becomes abstract, meaningless. But here's what makes it manageable. Here's the only reason America can owe that much and not face a debt crisis. The world trusts that America will pay it back. Because of that trust, America can borrow more at relatively low interest rates. The interest on 38 trillion in debt is enormous, hundreds of billions annually, but manageable because the rates are low. And the rates are low because the world trusts American stability, But what happens when that trust disappears? What happens when investors decide they'd rather own gold than own promises from a government led by someone who attacks his own central bank, threatens his own allies, makes policy through incoherent speeches, and demonstrates no respect for institutions or norms? What happens when the risk premium on American debt increases because America suddenly looks risky? Interest rates rise. The cost of servicing that 38 trillion increases, maybe by 100 billion annually, maybe by 200 billion. At some point, the math stops working. At some point, the debt becomes unsustainable not because of the amount, but because of the cost of servicing it. We're not there yet, but we're moving in that direction, and Trump is accelerating the movement. Every action that destroys trust, every statement that makes America look unstable, pushes us closer to the point where the math stops working, where the debt burden becomes unmanageable, where America faces a genuine fiscal crisis not because of spending levels, but because the world stopped trusting American promises. Here's the irony that should be on every front page in America. Trump's entire brand is based on strength, making America great again, America first, restoring American power and prestige, making other countries respect America, making America strong. And what's he actually doing? He's making America weaker, demonstrably, measurably weaker. Global investors are fleeing American assets. The dollar is dropping. Trust in American institutions is evaporating. The foundation of American power is crumbling. And Trump is the one with the sledgehammer. Money that should reflexively flow to America during times of global stress is going elsewhere, to Australia, to Canada, to Europe, to gold. The flight to safety, that pattern that has defined global finance since 1945, where frightened investors buy dollars and US Treasury bonds, that pattern is breaking down. America is no longer the automatic safe haven. Gold is the safe haven. Other currencies are the safe haven. Anything but America. That represents a revolutionary change in global power dynamics. And here's why this matters more than most people grasp. The dollar's role as the world's reserve currency isn't just a financial curiosity. It's the foundation of American power, all of it. The reason America can maintain military bases in 100 countries is because the dollar's special status allows deficit spending that funds that military. The reason American sanctions devastate countries is because getting cut off from the dollar system means getting cut off from global trade. The reason America can run budget deficits that would bankrupt other countries is because the world needs dollars and will buy American debt to get them. All of American power, military and economic and diplomatic, rests on the dollar's special status. And that status exists only because countries choose to use dollars, choose to hold dollars, choose to trust dollars. The moment they choose alternatives, the moment they diversify away, American power diminishes proportionally. We're watching that choice happen in real time. China selling treasuries and buying gold. Russia building gold reserves. India diversifying. Central banks worldwide reducing dollar exposure. Each decision individually is small and rational, but collectively they represent the unwinding of American financial hegemony. And Trump is the catalyst. His chaos accelerates the process. His threats push more countries to conclude they need alternatives. His institutional attacks make the dollar less credible. His broken norms make American commitments worthless. Every erratic action drives more capital to gold, more diversification away from dollars, more countries seeking ways to reduce their dependence on American financial systems. The data screams this message. Gold at 5,000 and climbing, silver up 400%, dollar down 2% in days, interest rates elevated as capital flees. Every indicator pointing the same direction simultaneously. These aren't random market movements. This is trillions of dollars making a collective judgment, and that judgment is devastating. America under Trump is too unstable, too unpredictable, too risky. The smart money is getting out. Not everyone at once, which would cause panic, but steadily, systematically, permanently reducing exposure. And once that process reaches critical mass, once enough capital has fled, once enough trust has been destroyed, reversing it becomes nearly impossible. Trump promised Americans a golden age, used those exact words, a new golden age of American prosperity and power. And he's delivered, just not the way he intended. This is a golden age for gold. Gold has never been more valuable, never been more sought after, never mattered more to global investors. But it's a golden age built on the ruins of American credibility, built on fear and distrust, and the systematic destruction of confidence in American leadership. The golden age Trump promised is happening, but it's the opposite of what he claimed to want. The dollar dropped more than 2% in the days after Davos. I keep returning to this number because most people don't understand its significance. 2% sounds small, negligible. But for the world's reserve currency to drop 2% in 72 hours represents hundreds of billions of dollars fleeing. It represents a collective market judgment that the dollar is overvalued relative to risk. That holding dollars is dangerous. That selling them is the smart move. And when that judgment becomes widespread, when it becomes the consensus view, it becomes self-fulfilling. People sell dollars because they think dollars will fall. Dollar selling causes dollars to fall. The prophecy fulfills itself. Interest rates tell the same story from a different angle. They're elevated and staying elevated because demand for dollars is weak. When everyone wants dollars, rates fall because you don't need to pay much to borrow them. When people are selling dollars, trying to get out, rates rise because you need to pay more to convince people to lend them. Those elevated rates are costing the US government billions in additional interest on the $38 trillion in debt. Every day rates stay high, America pays more. And rates are high because of Trump, because his behavior drives capital away. Australian dollar surging, euro strengthening, Canadian dollar rising. These aren't just technical currency movements. These represent active choices by investors to hold something other than dollars, to prefer Australian or European or Canadian assets over American assets. That represents an extraordinary reversal of 80 years of patterns. For nearly a century, when things got uncertain, everyone bought dollars. Now when things get uncertain, they're selling dollars. That's how far trust has fallen. That's how damaged American credibility has become. And once trust is lost at this level, once confidence evaporates this thoroughly, rebuilding it is incredibly difficult, perhaps impossible. Trust takes decades to build. The entire post-World War II period was required to establish dollar dominance, to create the Bretton Woods system, to make America the unquestioned center of global finance. 75 years of relatively stable, relatively predictable American leadership that made the world believe dollars were safe. Trump is destroying in months what took 3/4 of a century to construct. And unlike physical infrastructure, you can't just rebuild trust by spending money. It requires time and consistency and credibility that Trump has proven he's incapable of providing. He doesn't understand what he's destroying. That's perhaps the most frightening aspect. He genuinely seems to believe that threats make America stronger. That attacking institutions demonstrates power rather than weakness, that breaking norms shows strength rather than instability, that bullying allies commands respect rather than contempt. He's wrong on every count, but he has the power to act on his misunderstandings, and markets are responding to his actions with cold, rational judgment. They're voting with trillions of dollars, and they're voting against America. This isn't partisan. Markets don't care about politics. They care about risk and return. They care about predictability and stability. And they've concluded that America under Trump offers neither. That American assets carry too much risk given the potential returns. That parking wealth elsewhere, even if it means slightly lower returns, is worth it for the reduced exposure to Trump's chaos. That calculation is devastatingly simple and devastatingly damaging to American power. Every threat makes America weaker. Every attack on Powell makes the Fed less credible. Every rambling speech makes America look less stable. Every broken norm makes American commitments less meaningful. And unstable, incredible America drives investors to gold. Not to dollars, to gold. That's the fundamental shift. That's the crisis. That's what $5,000 gold is telling us. Safety used to mean America. Now safety means anything but America. You're watching American financial dominance collapse in real time. Not someday, not eventually, now. And the President of the United States is causing it. Not China, though China is capitalizing on it. Not Russia, though they prepared for it. Not external enemies. Trump himself. His actions, his words. His complete inability to grasp that power rests on trust, and trust requires predictable, institutionally grounded, norm-respecting leadership. The irony would be amusing if the stakes weren't so terrifyingly high. This isn't about liking or hating Trump. This is about market reality, about capital flows and risk assessment and global investors making rational decisions. And those decisions are saying America is too risky. That conclusion, that judgment, that vote of no confidence is driving the gold surge, the dollar drop, the capital flight. And nothing Trump is doing suggests he understands or cares. If anything, he's doubling down, making more threats, attacking more institutions, breaking more norms. So they're reallocating, moving to gold primarily, but also to other assets, other currencies, other countries. Every dollar that leaves represents a tiny decrease in American financial power. Every ounce of gold purchased instead of treasury bonds is a small vote against dollar dominance. Multiply that by trillions in flows, and you're watching a genuine historical shift. The kind that determines which nations matter in the coming century. And because of Trump, America is losing that competition. Not to superior rivals, to its own president's incompetence. If this helped you understand what's really happening, why these market movements matter far beyond commodity prices, why Trump is directly destroying the foundation of American global power, hit that like button and subscribe. This story is accelerating. The trajectory is clear. We're at the beginning of what future historians will study as the collapse of American financial hegemony, the moment the dollar lost its special status, the end of American economic dominance. And it's happening because one man can't grasp that threats destroy trust, and trust is power's foundation. Tell me in the comments, have you bought gold? Have you lost faith in where America is heading? What do you think American power looks like without financial dominance, without the dollar's special status? Because what happens over Trump's remaining time in office will determine whether America remains a genuine superpower or becomes just another large economy without unique privileges. The stakes couldn't be higher. The data couldn't be clearer. And Trump shows zero signs of understanding the damage he's causing or changing course. Thanks for watching. And I'll see you in the next one when Trump does whatever comes next and we watch gold climb towards $6,000 on the ashes of American credibility he's so enthusiastically burning.